Well, thank you everybody who all have joined for taking out time and joining this webinar in which we can exchange our thoughts, we can exchange our knowledge, experience, and so many good things that this forum really provides us. ProThoughts has been very helpful in organizing such kinds of events, and I sincerely thank ProThoughts in organizing this webinar as well, in which we as program project management people can come together and exchange our ideas. So with that, I would like to probably start with the webinar. And the topic for today's webinar is really to understand the hidden costs in agile projects. A little bit about myself. My name is Ketki. On right-hand side top screen, you can see my areas of expertise and my interest areas and my credentials in terms of degrees that I hold. I'm going to quickly jump over to the real agenda for today and enough about myself. So what we are going to really cover today is hidden costs in agile projects, assessing the impact of hidden costs, identifying and tracking hidden costs, mitigating scope creep, which is kind of, the end game for all of our program management community, project management community. It has been a very serious issue when we really go to manage our projects. Optimizing resource allocation, managing dependencies and interdependencies, effective estimation and planning techniques, practical strategies for cost optimization. And this is the final topic that we are going to cover today. And with that, we will open the forum in the last 10-15 minutes for questions and answers. And towards the end of this session, you will obtain one PDU from PMI. So I would like to start this webinar really with kind of inculcating a thought in our minds that is my agile or your agile more of a way of thinking or merely a framework? Now, why I really put up this slide is because we have multiple frameworks, multiple agile frameworks in the market today to choose from. There are about close to about 100 frameworks in the market today. And about 69% of the organization widely adopts Scrum as their framework. But let's go back a little bit and think whether this particular framework of Scrum really suits to our context, the context of our organization, the context of our work, the context of our projects, the context of the value delivery that we are really intending to do. It really makes me think that the choice of agile framework is or should be a collaborative discussion between teams, between organizational leadership, or any stakeholder. It is more about adoption of value, true agility in delivering value. Every part of the team, each of the team members should have input into what key features they will need from the various frameworks that we have in market today. The correct choice of framework to implement in our day-to-day way of work will depend on multiple variables arising from the context that we really work in. It includes the nature of the work, the experience of the organization, the cultural factors, and the changes desired to make us meet the objectives. Ultimately, the right choice should be the appropriate methodology that allows development teams to deliver their best work. If the framework chosen slows the development to a, let's say, glacial pace or imposes rigid processes that stifles a team's ability to react to the change. Probably we have selected a wrong framework, which has added on not only the cost, a hidden cost of delivering an agile project, but also has impeded us in the real value delivery. The goal that we started off for a project that has just off-railed, right? So the choice of the framework is really important in understanding the cost that you are going to incur in program, portfolio, or project management. Please feel free to put in your thoughts in the chat box, and we will go over it towards the end of the session. Now, having said that, we can have choices, and we have choices to choose from depending on the context that we work in. This is only achievable when we have a double loop learning, double loop mindset. What do I mean by when I say double loop learning? When we have set ourselves a target of following a particular framework, we have adopted certain strategies and techniques, we are going to deliver certain results, right? Now, if we adjust our actions only to keep the approach that we started with, the aim has to be, if we keep the aim as the approach to be successful, then we are just doing a single loop learning. But as soon as we start questioning the approach itself or changes that we need to bring in our approach, when we start questioning our hypothesis of our assumptions, the underlying beliefs in which we started off while choosing a framework, we are going into the double loop learning mindset. We have challenged our assumption, and we are not stuck on a particular framework to be successful, but rather we are kind of taking two more steps in adjusting the framework in order to be successful, in order to have successful outcomes in our projects and programs. Now, where did this double loop learning arise from? This really arose from a disciplined agile PMI, disciplined agile way of working, in which people really go into double loop learning in order to choose the framework that will minimize the hidden cost in their agile projects. Now, enough about, having a double loop learning and choosing the framework and, really understanding the context. But in your minds, you must be really thinking, okay, I know the context, I know everything, but is there any lead that I can have in order to choose a particular framework? Well, the context which I was talking about really depends on the team size, the domain complexity, the geographical distribution, the organizational distribution. Does your organization have a coalition partner? Is it just a single organization, or is it just a startup? If your organization is co-located, or is it really a global organization? Now, all these factors constitute to choosing a framework and tweaking it according to what will deliver the value in the fastest way. You could choose from Agile, pure Agile. You could be a pure Agilist. You could choose extreme programming. You could choose TDD. You could choose continuous delivery. You could choose exploratory Agile. You could choose a lean kind of delivery model. You could also choose continuous delivery, but it is of lean nature. You could also choose a very traditional program management approach in which you will have stage gates and so on and so forth. Now, choosing each of these will require you to understand the context. The context essentially comes from all these tactical scaling factors that is put up in the diagram here on the right-hand side. It is about domain complexity. It is about team size. It is about geographical distribution. It is about organizational distribution, skills availability, compliance, the complexity of the project that you have taken up onto you to deliver, right? So all these choices have trade-offs, right? Exploratory might work in certain context, but program might very well work in another context. And all these contexts depends on the tactical scaling factors, right? Major tactical scaling factors. There could be multiple more, which you can really dig deeper into the organizational aspects of your respective organization and come to a conclusion what really best suits you. And all these things, why it is necessary is to have that cost, scope, and timelines in hand, the actual program management in hand. Now, in this slide, what I want to really deliver is when we really choose a framework and we have disregarded, for example, cultural aspects, we have disregarded people aspects, disregarded change management that you will need to bring into the system in order to deliver a project, you will ultimately bear the cost of choosing a wrong framework, which not only will overshoot your cost, but will impede the value delivery as well. Choosing the wrong metrics of defining success criteria for your projects will impede the value delivery even with the choices that you made. So now here on this slide, I have put on very popular metrics in order to measure successes of an agile delivery. One is cycle time, cost of interruptions, the type of work, a very popular net promoter score, which you measure typically on a Likert scale, employee focus factor per number of endeavors, IRRs, net present value, and payback period. Now, all of these are different metrics. Just because one team is choosing that particular metric, it is not, or it is a standard metric in let's say Google or some other highly recognized industry, doesn't mean that this will really be a fit metric in your context. You choose the wrong metrics to define the success of your project. Ultimately, it will cause a hidden cost in your program delivery. And why would it cause a hidden cost? Because focusing on the wrong KPIs, right, will make teams work or deliver value to the wrong KPI. Ultimately, the value is not delivered. That was the real goal of the program. But just because you chose a poor metric which did not apply to your context, it caused you to have hidden cost incurred in the delivery of your portfolio, in your program, or even in your project, right? Each context is different. And so you have to very carefully design an appropriate metric which will suit your work, your project, your goal, the outcome of the value delivery. Who are you working for? What is your main goal? Now, this is a very vast, since I belong to a software industry, I'm going to use this, parlance and some examples pertaining to software industry. This diagram is really a complex software management way of work. If all aspects have to succeed, for example, let's say in your program, you want to build security guidance and tools because it is a standard, disciplined agile way of having quality in your system. But maybe your program does not require it as much. You're focusing on the wrong wrong area of program delivery. If you're focusing on the wrong area of program delivery, you are essentially introducing a hidden cost in your project, which is not really as valuable as the goal of the program itself. Now, quality really does affect the cost. I'm not saying that you should not include security at all cost if it doesn't satisfy your end goal. No. If it brings in quality, by all means, go ahead. Like I said, organizations are complex adaptive systems. In order to bring in any change, for example, recently I had a project in which we had to implement DevOps, for instance. Now, in order to implement DevOps, we have to also consider the people aspects of implementation of DevOps, right? Because we want to ensure quality, we want to implement DevOps, right? We want to implement CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment, because that is essentially what is Agile way of delivering value. Now, in order to do that, if I forego the essential aspects of people, how they interact with each other, how do they really learn a new way of work, how do they interact with people outside the system, and how do they interact with each other as well? If I forego all these important aspects, it is for sure going to introduce a hidden cost. I want to maintain the quality, of course, but the hidden cost arises if you have not managed the people aspects of program delivery, relationship aspects of program delivery. When you measure quality, however, are you really measuring the real quality? What is real quality in your program management? The quality term is having a wide implication and various plethora of things surrounding it. But for us, for program managers, for project managers, for portfolio managers, for us, quality makes sense in terms of what is produced and what customers value. Does the solution meet the stakeholder needs? Is it built according to generally accepted principles? Does it conform to regulations? Would it be easy to adapt if the product you are building does not have enough architectural base to easily adapt to changing requirements or changing stakeholder needs? Have you done enough quality? If not, if these are the things that you consider quality, if you have not done this quality, it is for sure going to have hidden costs in the delivery of your program. This is a really live example of what I have faced in my career so far. And when we disregard the real value delivery and disregard the context in which we are operating, we for sure derail from at least one aspect of program management, whether it is cost, whether it is schedule, or whether it is the scope, right? Now, I talked about people aspect. Now, this is essentially another aspect wherein it is not very fairly easy to calculate that cost, which arises when you have not managed the relationships and the people aspects in your program. This hidden cost is really something like, I'm sure you all might have experienced this as well, in which, the development team, for instance, says that no, ceremonies are really a waste of time. I could have developed 2 or 3 more features if I had not attended, the ceremonies. Let's say, assuming that you have explored Scrum in your various organizations. Now, this is a very common pitfall, and by not attending Scrum ceremonies or by not having people, the real people who are building the product on board with your framework will for sure introduce hidden cost. People need to be happy to deliver value. And so it really arises to an important point of how do you manage the change. If you have recently gone into agile development mode, how are you going to measure the change? How are you going to inculcate that change with happy people building your product? While it seems like common sense, some people are built, automatically to manage the change, to manage the resistance in their teams. But there are researched, and very popular methods, streamlined, structured methods that will help you in bringing change management. ADKAR is a very, very popular model. It is basically a bottom-up method that focuses on individuals and is based on the basic premise that change management needs to happen at an individual level. ADKAR stands for, although I need not say that, but then it essentially stands for awareness, inculcating desire, inculcating knowledge, having a motive or their ability to inculcate the ability to bring in a change. And the final one is the reinforcement. When something is done right, you reinforce the change, right? The other model is really the bridges model. This transition model is designed to help organizations effectively manage change by focusing on psychological and emotional aspects. Each one of the people that you interact with in the organization are emotional beings. We have to make adjustment and changes based on what we experience. And if we experience significant change, when a change is imposed on us, there are 3 phases to overcome that. Endings, letting go, the neutral zone, and the new beginnings. It's as simple as that. Now, there are also some custom change management techniques like the quarter, the McKinsey 7S. I'm not going through all of them here, but the 8-step change for quarter is also a very crucial, it is crucial to understand quarter's 8 change management strategies, which you can implement, again, based on the context, based on the cultural aspects of the people that you deal with in your day-to-day. Moving on. Now, many people really struggle around, how do I really estimate agile projects when I really don't know all the features beforehand, right? To which I have a simple answer that whenever you're bringing an agile project into an inception phase, the first thing that one needs to do is to have alignment between all stakeholders, all parties onto what the project will really deliver. It is a high-level scope of the project that needs to be finalized before any inception of any project of any kind. If you do not know what value a project is going to bring in, the essential key elements or the key deliverables that you are trying to meet, it is no point starting a project. The project failed at the very beginning itself if the value was not defined in the beginning. Having said that, when you have all the features, at least a high-level features zeroed down upon, what you can do is you can estimate those features, a very high-level features, and you can provide a ballpark estimate, right? And this is why since human beings are so bad in estimations, that's why we brought in the Fibonacci sequence and so on and so forth to establish a range of difficulty or ambiguity in a feature that needs to be delivered. Now, when we break down that requirements into a various set of features that needs to be delivered, and you already have a team sized up who is going to work on that feature, and you know how much velocity the team delivers. What you could do is you could take the last burn down chart that the team worked on, the last burn down chart of the project that the team worked on. And what you could do is estimate what is X. If you can say what is X in the chat, it will be great, but I will define what is X. X is really the cost of the team, the salaries that the employees make for a period of N by points completed in that period N. So it is essentially the measure of how much is 1 point going to be in terms of cost. If you have that measure and you have the vision of the project broken down into features measure, you can easily have a multiplicative rule applied, and you could estimate the cost of the project. You could add in a buffer of other expenses, and you could forecast the project budget. It is as simple as that. Some people also use Gantt charts, but it is appropriate for high risk endeavors with very low rate of change. When you are all set for delivering value to your customers and you expect that there is going to be changes in the features that they once thought are the final features, but when they actually saw the features working model in front of them, they realized that they needed it some other way. So it is not a low rate of change that you are expecting in an agile project, and Gantt charts therefore are not very well suited wherein you are expecting a lot of change in your project. Gantt chart, on the other hand, is very well understood by management. But again, if you bring in appropriate change management up the organization hierarchy and also down the organization hierarchy, you can very effectively manage the forecast or the budget that your program is going to get into. The other critical element of having that conversation, that communication with the stakeholders, is to limit the scope. When you're going to forecast the value delivered, you're going to have their buy-in into your agile programs. Now, this is a very first-hand experience that I'm talking about. It is a very simple concept. The benefit that they are going to get is really value subtracted by the cost. It's as simple as that. In your management schools, you might have also have had a chance to look at PERT and the GERT chart and things like that. But then they have really lost the value in today's world, because it is really the critical path plan that they take in. And in our agile context, in which we live really in a VUCA world, in which as soon as you delivered some story or some features, maybe it is going to get changed because maybe it has lost its competitive advantage in the marketplace, right? So, so these two, GERT and PERT, really have fallen out of favor within the IT project management community because of such reasons. But agile estimation really holds true. The only thing that is needed is appropriate communication strategy implemented to along the product roadmap, so as to say, and it changes along the product roadmap, and that is what makes a program manager's life so much more difficult in order to have all these things managed, all these ever-changing needs managed in terms of people, in terms of product, in terms of stakeholders. All this management requires that level of stakeholder management. Now, stakeholder for us is not only the people for which we are building the product, but it is also our people who are building that product. We need to manage that as well if we have to at all avoid the hidden costs. Feel free. I'm going to pause a little bit here. Any thoughts that you have in your minds, please feel free to shoot up your questions or any thoughts, any comments onto the Q&A box. Now, meanwhile, I'm going to just run over this diagram and talking about the choice of the funding strategy and understanding really the trade-off for choosing a particular funding strategy. Now, this also goes back to communicating with your stakeholders, the sponsors of your projects, to really get into the details of what works best in your context, the program that you're handling, the cultural aspects that you're handling, the people that you're going to make the product with, right? All this context matters when you're choosing a funding strategy. Having it on your business canvas and communicating it with your stakeholders forms an essence towards mitigating hidden costs that might arise in your agile project. Now, you could charge by feature, you could have a cost plus, you could have time and materials, you could have stage gear, you could have fixed price. Exact fixed price is not so much in vogue right now, because of course it is a VUCA word. You will never have that fixed scope and hence never fixed price. And therefore, we are not going to pay so much attention over here. But all of these funding strategies have their own trade-offs. So you have to choose wisely depending on the context of your vendors or of your project teams that you might have loaned from some other teams to narrow down on the funding strategy. Now, all these things really have to have in the inception phase. On the diagram above, you see the inception phase, the first stage of really the project. If you can see my laser pen here, this inception phase is initial work items and plan. It is over here that you are going to have the funding strategy frozen. Now, we are going to talk about hidden cost, which comes in the form of cost of delay and the cost of interruptions. These two concepts are very classic concepts in which you will incur hidden costs. Difficult to measure these hidden costs, but assessing the impact is fairly easy. Communicating it to the stakeholders is fairly easy. The opportunity cost of delaying the work, such as foregoing a revenue, missing the market entirely, these things are identified while you are communicating the cost of delay. The cost of delay considers that implementing something now may provide significantly more value than if you wait for the next 6 months or so, right? There can be homegrown calculations that you can apply in estimating the cost of delay, which helps you really in negotiations and communications with your stakeholders onto what feature is really important and how you could mitigate that cost of delay. Now, in assessing what features are more important, the stakeholder might say that, hey, all of them are important for me. But then when you really go deeper into the cost of delay and you apply a Kano model, maybe interview various personas, you apply the Moscow principle, and there are so many other frameworks in the market today that can help you determine the priority of the features that needs to be there in order to eliminate the cost of delay and hence will mitigate the hidden costs that may arise in your projects. Now, here is the diagram on the left-hand side that you see. That this was a famous Standish Group study in which they surveyed close to about 1,000 projects, and they also studied what features and functions are used in a typical system. It is no, I do not get surprised by this number at all, because earlier, when the agile delivery, when the prioritization techniques, prioritization, the value of prioritization was not there, 45% of the features developed by the development team or the build team or in any other industry, the thing that is actually being worked on was never ever used. So what is really the value that you delivered by delivering the 45% of the features? If this was mitigated, you could have avoided the cost of delay of important features. Those 7% that is always and always going to get used and is valuable in today's market. Now, another way to think about is really the Pareto principle, that the 80-20 rule. I'm going to talk about software because that's my area. The 80-20 rule in software, that is that 80% of users only use 20% of the features. This is one of the kind of hidden cost. You could have homegrown calculations to determine the cost of delay. It is very difficult to calculate, however, but easily communicated. And you could really, minimize this hidden cost very easily, fairly easy. I'm going to talk about the cost of interruption now. Now, when you are implementing agile framework in a new team, right? And the organization is still undergoing that change of having a priority model, of having a kind of, fixed delivery approach, of having ceremonies around the features delivered. Some stakeholders might even come to you, and it happens quite regularly, that now we want to halt this one and now we want to start something else, right? Now the role of the project or program or the portfolio manager is really to divert those diversions itself, which might arise, which might cause a hidden cost to arise. Now, what is that hidden cost? What is it that happens when you interrupt a running train? It halts, right? It causes delays, right? And again, it goes back to the cost of delay, right? The loss of momentum caused by the distraction from the original purpose can introduce a hidden cost. The cost of the restart, when you kickstart a motorbike, you really have to pump up some more diesel into it, right? And that is the cost to restart, to reassemble the resources, to reassemble our thought process. It all encompasses a hidden cost. The cost of wastage, either from the earlier work going bad, or because the problem that you were solving has evolved and now some of your earlier work is no longer valid. All these things accumulate, have an accumulative effect on the hidden cost. This provides the understanding of all these cost of delays and communicating it to all levels of organization who are essentially your stakeholders. It provides an opportunity for all of us to identify areas where you need to focus on to reduce interruptions, potentially improving both productivity and morale of the people that are working for that initiative or project. Now, again, this cost of interruption is very hard to calculate. It requires your guesstimate to measure the impact of interruptions, essentially making this a fuzzy measure, but again, something that needs to be communicated and efficient collaboration to happen at all levels of the organization to minimize that hidden cost that can occur in an agile project. Okay, so this is an interesting topic, how you can mitigate scope creep. In agile project management, we essentially want the scope to, be on target with the current market situation. We kind of want the value delivery to have an effect, which is actually our KPI that we measure, right? So we want that to have a current state, right? So why would we want to mitigate scope, right? That could be a question that could arise in somebody's mind, right? But again, it is essential. If you in agile project management, while the scope is not really fixed, but the scope of value delivery indeed can be fixed, right? Again, it goes back to the Kano model and prioritization and really paying attention to that 80%, 80-20 Pareto principle, in order to maintain the scope of the value delivered to be of the essential features that will cause an impact to the bottom line of an organization, or to even the KPI that really suits you. So essentially keeping the roadmap updated with crucial elements of scheduling strategy. Now, why scheduling strategy came into picture is because we want to limit the scope creep, right? Because we want to ultimately deliver the value, and we do not want to incessant scope. We don't want to really burden ourselves or burden the teams, or derail ourselves from the value delivery by incessant scope creeps into the project, right? So what we have to really communicate is the scheduling strategy that we might have devised in the inception phase itself, right? When you have it devised, communicated, and formed in collaboration with all the stakeholders. Whether you choose any scheduling strategy, depending on the context again, but if that is communicated, it will help you to mitigate scope creep, because it will help you to focus on the priority value delivery, priority features which will deliver value, and disregard or make the priority low of the features that is not going to get you as much value, like the 45% of the features, right? So whatever the scheduling strategy you choose, whether it is a continuous delivery scheduling strategy in which you're going to release the features in a continuous manner, although it can appear unpredictable to people unfamiliar with the approach, right? But as a matter of fact, it is a very predictable, scheduling strategy, given the transparency and control it provides to the stakeholders, right? If you take cost-driven approach of scheduling strategy, the solution is to be delivered for a specific amount or less. Therefore, at least one of the schedule or scope must vary, right? So again, cost-driven scheduling strategy works when you want to limit the scope creep in your projects. This is particularly useful when your organization is focused on coming in on budget, as opposed to spending the IT investments wisely. Well, the nuisance is important. The nuance is important over here. We have date-driven scheduling strategy here. It works well for agile, scrum based or Kanban based life cycle models, so that the iterations are fixed, time boxed, and it is date driven. And since it is date driven and you meet with the stakeholders time and often, it becomes very easy to onboard them for maintaining that Pareto principle onto or go back to your Kano model to determine what priority features are in there that will help us to deliver the value. The fourth one is the scope driven. It is useful when time to market is paramount and delivering the minimal acceptable functionality is desired, right? It is, mind you, it is different than the MVP that has become quite a cliched, a kind of, word today. And the real value is really if you can release the feature, right? Really, if it is really marketable, if it is a minimum marketable release, minimum releasable feature, or a minimum business increment, not really just an MVP, which is mostly exploratory in nature. It is effective for regulatory projects. Difficult to forecast timeline initially until you determine the capacity of the team, or if your team is well established, you can actually determine the capacity much earlier in advance. Managing dependencies and interdependencies. It is a screenshot that is taken from Atlassian Jira. There are so many tools available in the market today that makes managing dependencies, interdependencies fairly easy and allows you to be so-called on critical path always, to really mitigate a hidden cost that could arise if the team is, let's say, idle, waiting for a dependency or an interdependency. This risk is always there, but it is easily managed nowadays with the tools and features that these tools have in the market today. Now I'm going to come to effective estimation and planning techniques. This is a snippet from PMI, Disciplined Agile. I think it is Disciplined Agile Senior Scrum Master certification. I think the slide is from that. And, the arrow represents, the choice that is mostly kind of more favorable for us as program, portfolio, or project managers. The cost set by stakeholders, if you try to estimate, if your strategy is fixated on estimations based on cost set by stakeholders, it is kind of, introducing a more hidden cost into your project because it is dependent on others' expectation onto value delivery. Then you have function points. Then you actually do not use any estimation strategy, or in a very popular planning poker, if you're using that, it is quite a good estimation strategy. Actually, if you're following Scrum kind of agile, affinity estimation is another estimation strategy. Relative mass grid valuation, I'm not going to go into deeper due to the time constraint that we have, but I'm happy to answer any of these estimation strategies in detail. If the need be, please drop in your email address and I'll be very happy to explain these estimation strategies to you. Educated guess by team, educated guess by experienced individuals, highly preferred, because this will make us go in the direction of very close estimations in terms of cost, in terms of budgets, in terms of schedule. So from down to up, the more up the strategy is, the highly favorable that is. Now, choosing estimation unit, again, ours is the least favored, my least favorite personally, because if you know Weber's law, you know human beings are very poor in estimations, and hence the least favorite of mine is for sure ours. Normalized points come second. Yes, I kind of agree to that. T-shirt sizes and relative points highly favored in agile context. Now, some practical strategies for cost optimization. This is clearly not an exhaustive list, but the primary message that I have based on the experiences that I have had with my agile portfolio program or project management is that simplicity beats all. Keep DevOps simple, focus on productivity, focus on agility, and focus on the impact. And the impact is the crucial word here. It is the value delivered. If you focus on that, of course, you will be on target for the cost, and you could always avoid hidden cost in software program management, for sure. You could devise a test-driven software development. You could implement that. TDD is a widely adopted, strategy which will help us tremendously in order to minimize cost, because everything is driven by test. Everything is driven by expectation, which is clearly articulated, put forth to the development or the build team, and they know exactly what value we are expecting out of them to be delivered. Test-driven strategy also creates a kind of, double loop thinking process for our stakeholders as well, in order to determine what exact features would they need in order to beat the market competition. Lean thinking is classic. It can never be beaten. If you think lean, you will never have incremental hidden cost in your agile projects. Design thinking is essential if you are focusing on value delivery. This is a kind of way of thinking that we have to adopt. It is not a step of procedure that you need to adopt, but a way of thinking to deliver the products in your organizations. Now, Disciplined Agile, PMI already has Disciplined Agile certifications available. If you read this, you will understand how context matters, how hidden cost affects your agile projects, and how these costs can be mitigated. And with that, I will end this presentation, and I'll go to the questions and answers. Namita, would you like to pitch in about anything? These are the PMI certifications that I spoke about. ProThoughts has free knowledge sessions. You could check out the upcoming webinars. ProThoughts has extensive, e-learning modules, certification training workshops, corporate trainings, which you can avail of. You could reach out to ProThoughts at this number. For any questions to me, I'm going to, go to the chat here and kind of go towards the questions that you might have had throughout the session. In the chat window, you also see the 1PDU claim code. Please copy paste it at the end of the session. Okay. In the chat window, I'm going to paste the 1PDU claim code, and we do have quite a lot of questions. Will the recording and supporting document be available afterwards for a deeper dive for those of us interested by a deeper dive? Namita, would this be available to the attendees? Namita, if you're there. I think so. If not, Sylvie, I'll get in touch with you to see if it is going to be available. Going to question and answers. Can you please explain a bit more on the scope creep on value delivery with some examples? Great questions. It will take more time to explain on that. Maybe, I'll assign it to somebody to get back to you. Unable to see if you're displaying anything on screen. Was it not 8:52 p.m.? So I stopped screen sharing. And I think that is the reason you're not seeing anything on the screen. Agile mentions estimation should be done from the development team. When we say estimation from experienced individual is preferred, is it the development team or by some SMEs? Okay, good question. So when you say, development team, do not expect some experienced SMEs in your team. Well, your team should essentially have a generalized specialist. Some folks, not all 5 fingers are equal. I understand that. But some folks will, by the virtue of their experience, will automatically be subject matter experts. And when we say estimation from experienced individual, this is a strategy that you could apply in a specific context. For example, you have a mission critical, launch of what was that, Chandrayaan, right? The rocket which landed on the moon, right? If you have certain mission critical software that has to be designed for Chandrayaan, what are you going to do? Of course, you're going to do planning poker, acceptable, but wouldn't you prefer, depending on the context, that some experienced individuals in that team assess the complexity of the problem because it is mission critical? Does that answer your question? Hidden costs can be controlled at what specific moment? Throughout the program, throughout the project, you're going to incur hidden cost if you are not paying attention to small nuances at every stage of the project, right? So when I say small nuances, it could be as small as resolving conflicts. That is a very minute, momentary conflicting situation that you saw, but it could snowball into a larger impact, incurring a cost of delay or a cost of interruption. So you have to manage that hidden cost throughout the program. Please share code. Okay. So I'm going to say the code, and we are 3 minutes to closure. Any final comments? If not, I'm going to open the poll. I'm going to start the poll. Please do provide your vote. Thank you. Going to close this polling in about 1 minute, and we have 2 more polls. If you can please devote some few moments of yours. I'm very thankful for your presence today. It was very enjoyable for me to share experiences and to share the knowledge with all of you, and hope to see you again. And the world is round, and we will for sure see each other again in some form or the other.